There have been multiple rumors going around the past couple of days in regards to some Xbox exclusives opening up to, well, no longer being exclusive, and the reaction to it has been interesting. I feel like this is a conversation that we have every few years. One of the last big times it really cropped up had to do with Ori and the Blind Forest, which was a game that is not from a first-party dev underneath Xbox, but was published by Microsoft. Initially was an Xbox and PC exclusive and eventually found its way to the Nintendo Switch, not to PlayStation, as well as before then, an even larger talk in regards to when Xbox games were kind of opening and broadening the definition of Xbox exclusives by making those games consistently release on PC at around the same time. And what makes the rumors going around lately a little more interesting on top of these is the fact that, one, some of the games that are being theorized as opening up and losing exclusivity are games from what are now first-party devs, even if they were ones that were acquired recently relatively by Microsoft. And two, the fact that of the systems that could be going to is not just simply the Switch, which I think sometimes gets a pass from people because for whatever reason Nintendo is not viewed as being a direct competitor with Xbox and PlayStation the same way that they are viewed as against each other, but also going to PlayStation. There's actually two different main rumors going around right now at the same time. The first of which came up was a more kind of generically stated rumor of an Xbox exclusive coming out on the Nintendo Switch. The first place that I saw any talk about this was from Nate the Hate in a video. And he intentionally did not state any specific game, but did give hints in terms of it being something that was fairly popular as an Xbox exclusive, going specifically to the Nintendo Switch. A lot of people are taking this to likely mean Hi-Fi Rush, which came out last year as a great surprise hit for Xbox. I've seen some people also put forward Psychonauts 2 as being a possibility. I'm not too interested in getting into the in-depths of what game it could be. I'm much more interested in the reaction to something that was an exclusive opening up to other platforms, although Psychonauts 2 is an interesting example there because that is a game that already went multi-platform because it was on PlayStation at the same time, because it was something that was promised pre-acquisition from Xbox. The other more recent rumor comes from Stephen Totillo talking about Sea of Thieves, a game that is developed by Rare, owned by Microsoft. And while it has been around for a little while now, it has only been available on Xbox PC, and he suggests that there has been talk of bringing it to specifically PlayStation as an additional place for it to live. Now, to be honest, I'm not really all that interested in diving into how likely or how true these particular rumors are, but I do find that the conversations that have started up because of the rumors are really interesting. And I want to talk a little bit about what it could mean for Xbox opening up exclusive games, if that is a thing they are doing, and how, in my mind at least, that really doesn't clash with the narrative that Xbox has been having lately. But I can also kind of understand the frustration coming from some fans, even if I don't fully agree with it. To begin with, why something like this potentially actually makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm not necessarily saying that Xbox is going to completely get rid of the concept of exclusives. I've seen some people argue that as a sort of slippery slope thing, that, you know, the moment one or two games go over to PlayStation, they're going to open up the whole catalog, which isn't really based on any actual fact, especially because these are, again, rumors just to begin with. But these suggest that a small handful of specific games could open up to other platforms, whether that's Hi-Fi Rush coming to Switch or Sea of Thieves coming to PlayStation. And a lot of reason why this makes some sense to me is because of the fact that Xbox is not about the hardware anymore. It hasn't been for some time. I think that there are people who are very invested in Xbox as a brand and want the console to be the focus, and I understand that, but it really hasn't been the case for a while now, primarily during the time of Phil Spencer taking charge. I mean, there has been a focus on hardware with them when they were doing the push to releasing a 4K system with the Xbox One X, and then obviously the release of the Series X and the Series S. The hardware is not something that they're not at all considering, and I don't think there's any plans to completely abandon having a physical Xbox system. But over the past few years, I think it's become fairly apparent that the general strategy of Xbox is focused far more on Xbox as a platform, not necessarily caring about what particular system you play on, which previously I think most people were readily able to accept as being Xbox or PC, but that definition could be expanding out more and more to including games that are getting releases on things like the Nintendo Switch or even, yes, PlayStation. I don't think this necessarily means that Xbox is bound to go the exact same route as someone like Sega, where they embraced becoming a third-party publisher over focusing on their own system and hardware, but I do think that moving forward, there is a very real possibility of some individual games on a game-by-game basis maybe being opened up because to Microsoft, it makes sense. Either because of what communities they could tap into, audiences they could open up to, and even potentially doing things like trying to get people invested in their games on other platforms and then give them a reason to maybe look at not only other Xbox stuff, but even things like Xbox Game Pass. I have seen some people also cling to the idea of, well, you know, Xbox has been doing all these acquisitions, they've been in all these companies. Some of these acquisitions are clearly leading to what are now first-party exclusives that previously may not have been. A great example of this being Starfield, that was released only on Xbox and PC, even though definitely in the early years, Bethesda was planning on that being a larger multi-platform release. There's a lot of reasons to look at that track record and be like, okay, so clearly Xbox is trying to build up a portfolio of first-party titles and exclusives to give people a reason to focus on their platform more, whether that's simply buying Game Pass to use on PC or investing in a physical Xbox system. And then if there is talk of some of those games beginning to open up to other platforms, that seems to go against that logic for a lot of people. Now, me personally, I honestly don't feel a ton of brand loyalty when it comes to system platforms. Especially when it comes to things like Xbox and PlayStation. If anything, if I had to pick one, it would probably end up actually being Nintendo. I mean, if you've watched my channel in the past, I feel like that comes through a little bit. But really, I divide my time across all these things a lot, and I focus much more on the games themselves. I rarely really think about platform as a lead focus. But I can understand how, for someone who has focused on a concept of brand loyalty, wanting to see almost kind of an odd sense of reciprocation of that from the brand itself, and the idea of Xbox opening up exclusive to other people is a really weird thing to them. You know, I see that, my immediate thought is, oh great, opening up to larger audiences, more people get the chance to play this game, that sounds awesome. And meanwhile, a lot of these dedicated Xbox fans are taking this as a sign of Xbox not even wanting to invest in their own system and platform, and instead are opening things up to other people when they could push that as an advantage. Which again, I think the really important thing to point out here, aside from the fact these are again, rumors just to begin with, but even if these particular titles did open up to multi-platform, I honestly think it's a reach to assume that means then that the entire catalog going forward is going to follow that same kind of logic. Also, I think it's important to emphasize here that even if they were to be opening up games to other platforms, clearly it's a timed exclusivity structure because that's what would be happening right now. Even if it were Hi-Fi Rush, that is at minimum a full year after the game released on Xbox platforms. Sea of Thieves, quite a few more years than that. While I would still disagree with some of the hate going against it, I think understand a little bit more if they were becoming true same-day release, multi-platform big deals, as opposed to something where they focus on their audience first, particularly also giving it to them right out the gate on Game Pass if people are subscribing to that, and then eventually, a year more down the line, making an option for other platforms as well. And ultimately, if these rumors do end up being true, I feel like it all comes back to what I said earlier in this video, and is a sign that I feel like I've been tapping multiple times over the past few years. Xbox really isn't a console anymore. The Xbox systems in the forms of the Series S and the Series X are a thing that Microsoft cares about to an extent, and it is a way for people to play their games, but it is not the be-all, end-all focus. And while I think there are Xbox fans out there who are disappointed by that focus, it doesn't change the fact that that's what the focus now is. I mean, very clearly, Xbox has been focusing more and more on them being a platform of games devoid of any specific home. The Xbox is the main console you go to for it, PC is another option to access it, cloud gaming is another way of taking advantage, you can even do things like playing it on your iPhone, and eventually opening up to other systems, whether that be the Nintendo Switch or even the PlayStation. That is, at least in current Xbox's eyes, a win, because you're ultimately playing their games regardless of which thing it's on. And if you invest in their system and focus on their games, great, even better, but that is not the be-all, end-all focus of doing that traditional approach to consoles. To be honest, it's an approach that I honestly don't know if it's actually the best thing for them to be doing. I understand the appeal of keeping things in the kind of simple, clearly marked lines of these are the consoles with their respective first-party exclusive games. That's what people are used to, and people like investing in a brand that feels like it has a strong core identity like that. But at the same time, it's hard for me to argue against the idea of, if it's a fun game and I want more people to play it, I'd be happy for it to come to other systems. I would love to see Nintendo and PlayStation open up to others, although clearly that has not been a thing either of them have been talking about much outside of PlayStation beginning to port some things to PC. If these rumors are true, I just think it's a further sign of how Xbox is not trying to treat their own IP and brands as a traditional console business. Again, I don't know if that's actually the best idea or not, but that's the direction we're going, and I'm very curious to see how this all actually works out in the long run, assuming this is even happening in the first place. So those are my thoughts on a handful of Xbox exclusives possibly no longer being such. I'm very interested in seeing how these rumors actually pan out over the year, if we find out any news about those soon. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you guys later.